It's the 21st of June, and you've been hiding it. Not just from the world, but from the people who love you the most. They ask how you are. You say, "I'm fine." You smile through the nausea. You joke through the chest pain. You nod politely as someone says you look healthier than ever. And deep down, you ache. Not just from the illness, but from the shame. The shame of weakness. The shame of aging faster than you thought. The shame of that diagnosis, the one you haven't told your wife about. The one you haven't admitted to your kids. The one that sits in your nightstand drawer in a manila envelope marked confidential. Let me ask you this. Why do we treat sickness like sin? Why do we, especially as men, carry illness like it's a failure? Like it somehow invalidates our strength, our leadership, our faith? But what if I told you that your silence isn't protecting your family? It's isolating you from their love. And more importantly, it's muting the voice of heaven that says, you are still worthy. This story begins with someone like you. His name is Thomas, a retired Christian school principal from Missouri, a father of 3, a deacon at his church, a man of stature, respect. And yet, for 14 months, he told no one he was sick. Stage 2 prostate cancer. Caught early, but advancing. He felt betrayed by his own body. And worse, ashamed. You see, Thomas believed something dangerous. That illness meant weakness, and weakness meant he was no longer fit to lead. He stopped teaching Sunday school. He ghosted his prayer group. He smiled less, prayed less, and night after night he whispered the same thing to God. Please don't let them see me like this. But what if heaven wasn't waiting for Thomas to be strong again? What if heaven was trying to reach him through his weakness? That's when something remarkable happened. One night, unable to sleep, Thomas opened his Bible and turned to Psalm 34-18. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. He wept, not because he finally felt seen, but because, for the first time, he felt held. That's when he sensed something else. A presence in the room. Warm, weighty, not frightening, but firm. A whisper in his spirit, not loud, but unmistakable. You are not hidden. You are honored. It was the first time he ever felt the presence of the Archangel Michael. Not because Michael came to heal his body, but to restore his dignity. This is what I call the honor code, a divine principle buried deep in the heart of Scripture. God doesn't honor you because you're unbroken. He honors you because you belong to Him. Let that settle. Because the devil wants you to believe that your diagnosis disqualifies you. That the IV lines, the medication, the trembling hands make you a lesser man. But the kingdom of heaven operates on a different currency. And it's not just spiritual fluff. According to a study from the Mayo Clinic, patients who receive support from faith-based communities show 30% higher treatment adherence and significantly lower anxiety scores. That means when you share your truth, you don't just feel better emotionally. You heal better physically. Shame suffocates. Honor breathes life back into your bones. So today, I want to ask you, who are you pretending for? Who are you hiding the truth from out of fear they won't respect you? Because the truth is, they'll probably love you more. When Thomas finally told his adult son, David, about the cancer, he expected judgment. What he got instead was tears. And the words, I thought you stopped trusting me, but now I know you were just scared. Let's walk through this together, Dad. The next Sunday at Thomas's church was unlike any other. He felt the weight of every eye in the room before he even stepped up to the microphone. For weeks he had wrestled with the decision to speak, to tell the truth. But today, something inside him shifted. Maybe it was the whisper he'd felt in the night Michael's presence, reminding him he was honored. Maybe it was the memory of his son's words. Or maybe it was the simple, undeniable truth that hiding had become too heavy a burden. So he stood, and with a voice cracked by emotion, he told his story. He shared the diagnosis, the shame, the fear of losing respect, The nights he spent wondering if God had abandoned him. The sanctuary was silent. But then something extraordinary happened. The worship leader began to sing. Slowly, the congregation rose, surrounding Thomas in song and prayer. And in that moment, Thomas felt a Rushan, overwhelming sense that he was not alone. That's when Michael showed up, not in a blaze of glory, but in the quiet strength that comes from being deeply known and deeply loved. He was there in the hands raised toward heaven, in the eyes of the church family that no longer saw a sick man, but a beloved brother, in the prayers that wrapped around Thomas like a shield. This brings us to the third pillar in the Honor code system. N. Name your truth. Because healing doesn't start with hiding. It starts with naming. Naming the pain, the fear, the shame. Thomas named his secret out loud, and the chains began to break. According to the American Cancer Society, patients who openly communicate about their diagnosis experience improved mental health and report better quality of life. And that's not just clinical. That's spiritual. When you speak your truth, you invite God's healing presence. You open the door for support from others. You start to live in freedom instead of fear. So, I want to ask you, what secret are you carrying today? What truth have you buried deep because you thought you had to carry it alone? Because like Thomas, the moment you name it, you make space for grace. But this journey isn't easy. Not every face in the congregation smiled. Some looked away. Some whispered. But Thomas kept going. Because Michael was still there. And the archangel's honor doesn't depend on human approval. It depends on divine truth. Part 3. When honor meets vulnerability. After speaking his truth in church, Thomas returned home feeling exposed but lighter. But the hardest conversation awaited. His wife Mary had sensed his distance but hadn't guessed the truth. The secret he'd buried beneath smiles and silence. That evening, Thomas sat beside Mary on their old couch, the one where they'd shared dreams and tears for nearly 30 years. His heart pounded like a drum, but he knew he had to break the silence. "Mary," he began, voice thick with emotion, "there's something I've been hiding from you, something I thought would break us, but I've realized keeping it secret was breaking me." He told her about the diagnosis, the shame, the fear, and the night spent praying for strength. Mary's eyes welled up with tears, but instead of retreating, she reached for his hand. "Thomas," she said softly, "we're in this together, always." That moment was a turning point. Because when vulnerability meets honor, something powerful happens. Walls crumble. Trust grows. Healing begins. This brings us to the next pillar in the Honor Code. O. Open the heart. True healing demands openness not just with others, but with God. Thomas and Mary started praying together daily. Not for a cure, but for peace, for courage, for faith to hold steady through the storm. Here's the powerful truth. According to a study in the Journal of Religion and Health, couples who engage in shared prayer and spiritual practices report higher levels of marital satisfaction and resilience during health crises. That means that faith is not just a crutch, it's a bridge. But faith isn't a magic wand. Thomas's journey was far from easy. The nights were long, the treatments exhausting, and the fear of what tomorrow might bring loomed large. But in the darkest hours, he felt Michael's honor again, not as a sudden miracle, but as steady strength. Michael honored Thomas's fight not because he was perfect, but because he was willing to be vulnerable, because he was willing to lean into the pain rather than run from it. So, I want to ask you now, who needs your honesty today? Who could be your Maratha one who helps you carry your burden? You don't have to walk alone. Part 4. The test that revealed grace. Weeks passed after Thomas and Mary began praying together, and the treatments grew tougher. The cancer was stubborn, and the doctors recommended an aggressive test tone that terrified Thomas more than any diagnosis. The night before the test, Thomas sat quietly in his bedroom, Mary by his side. He felt the weight of fear pressing down, fear of the unknown, fear of loss, fear of disappointing his family. But then, amidst the quiet, came a familiar peace, a presence that felt like a warm shield around his heart. It was Michael's, honor steady, unwavering. He whispered, "You are not alone." That next morning, Thomas faced the test with trembling hands but a fortified spirit. And here's what happened. In the waiting room afterward, Thomas was surrounded by the church prayer group he had rejoined. They held his hands, spoke words of faith, and reminded him of God's promises. This leads us to the next part of the Honor Code. R. Receive support. Because healing is never meant to be a solo journey, Thomas learned to accept help, not just from doctors, but from his faith family, from his wife, his children, and his church community. Here's a powerful truth. According to a study published in the Journal of Psychosocial Oncology, patients who have strong social support show better coping skills and improved health outcomes. The prayers, the meals, the visits, they were lifelines. They reminded Thomas he was not defined by his illness, but by the love surrounding him. And yet, the path wasn't easy. There were days when fear won, days when tears fell freely, days when Thomas questioned if he was enough. But every time, Michael's honor returned. Not as a dazzling miracle, but as a quiet, persistent courage. I want to ask you, who is your faith family? Who can you let in to carry your burden? Remember, even Michael, the great warrior, honors your human need for community and support. Months had passed since Thomas faced his toughest medical test. His body was weaker, but his spirit was stronger than ever. The cancer was still there, but so was something greater hope. One Sunday, the pastor invited Thomas to share his testimony. A man who once hid his illness in shame was now standing tall before his church family, not just as a survivor, but as a witness. Thomas spoke about his fear, his shame, and the power of naming his truth. He talked about the night he felt Archangel Michael's presence, and how that honor restored his dignity and gave him courage. The congregation listened, many wiping tears. People approached him afterward, sharing their own struggles and thanking him for his honesty. This brings us to the final element of the Honor Code. C. Celebrate courage. Because every step toward truth is a victory. Every moment of vulnerability is a miracle. And every time you rise after shame, heaven honors you. Here's a fact to hold on to. Studies show that sharing your story of struggle and faith can inspire hope in others, strengthening communities and healing hearts. Thomas's journey wasn't about conquering cancer alone. It was about reclaiming his identity as a beloved child of God, worthy, honored, and loved. Now, I want to ask you, what secret are you ready to bring into the light? Who can you inspire by sharing your story? How can you let Michael's honor remind you that you are treasured, no matter your struggles? Because today, on the 21st of June, heaven says this to you. Your secret is known, your pain is honored, and you are still worthy. Here are your final action steps. Name your secret. Speak it to God, a trusted friend, or even yourself. Seek your honor. Remember, Michael's presence honors you, even when you feel broken. Open your heart. Let faith and loved ones in. You're not alone. Receive support. Accept help. It's a sign of strength, not weakness. Celebrate courage. Share your journey and inspire hope. Thank you for being brave enough to listen today. If this story touched your heart, consider sharing it with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, your honor is not based on perfection, but on belonging.